Isn't it interesting that a part of our brain is described as the reptilian brain? And that can't be any further from spirituality than it gets. I mean, this supposed really reptilian brain, as they call it, medically speaking, or, in all these scientific medical terms, ultimately deals with emotions such as fight or flight. It also deals with the need for survival, the need for reproduction. It's also behind feeling fear and worried or potential danger, to be careful. You see, all these symptoms we generally go along with without questioning them. I would say almost all humans on the planet do that. Only a small percentage actually stop and think, do I really have to go along with this impulse that is trying to overtake me right now? You see, reproduction and stuff, having children, can be a beautiful thing, obviously. Still, they describe it as part of the reptilian brain, this need for reproduction. And many people live there. I myself personally do not have such a need to have children. I don't have the need to find myself a partner, to get married, to be together forever with someone, that whole romantic notion. In fact, most marriages end in divorce. That's also a statistical fact globally, but that's not really the subject point of this video. The point is that most people go along with the tendencies of their own reptilian brain without questioning them, and therefore it actually undermines the ability to perceive life from a spiritual perspective. It actually overpowers them entirely, and they can't really perceive their own spiritual nature because it's all focused purely on physical things. Isn't that interesting? Fight or flight. You see a danger. It's true. Sometimes you gotta protect yourself. Sometimes you gotta get out of the way of something that might otherwise hurt you physically. So in a way, it's not so much that it is a terrible thing, of course. That's not what I'm trying to say. It's not something you want to get rid of entirely, with the idea that you should not feel any of the things that it's causing you to feel. But it is interesting to realize that in many cases, fears also arise because of the reptilian brain that are completely nonsensical, where you feel threatened or worried for your own survival based on what you're observing to the senses, even though you have this spiritual power within you that can help you to overcome your circumstances as well. But in that fear, in that initial fear, people forget about it. So again, spiritual awareness is completely being blocked from view if we don't watch out. So I would dare anyone that listens to this video to really analyze it for themselves, as I am doing in my own personal life, to really witness how this actually occurs throughout your days on this planet. There will be moments that you will not feel good, that you feel stressed, feel extremely worried about stuff. But the ability to then take a step back and remember, first and foremost, that you are infinite awareness going through these experiences will allow you to make better choices from a better vantage point, a spiritual one, where it no longer completely controls you, this fear or worry or this desperation, this despair, whatever it is concerning physical matters. Because ultimately, you can improve your life however you want, as long as you remain calm and in touch with your true self, the true I, beyond the ego, infinite awareness. If that doesn't happen, that explains a lot of the struggles, stresses and suffering that humanity is going through on a daily basis. So in your case, in my case, whatever it is, just analyze if the activities that you're involved in are also charged by spiritual awareness, or if they're just physically based purely on that level. Because as long as it's on that level, you'll never be able to truly experience who you really are. That's the sad part. People go through their entire lives thinking they are their name, their body, their age, their gender. There's this obsession with how you identify yourself these days concerning your gender. And again, I also don't judge people for that. People can do whatever they want. You see, it doesn't really matter to me, obviously, what kind of sexuality you have or what kind of gender you perceive yourself to be. You know, you can say whatever you want about it for yourself, but ultimately, the problem here can arise for most in that scenario as well, that they become so identified with themselves physically that they purely see themselves as a physical being, and again, not as the true spiritual, infinite awareness that they really are, beyond the body, beyond the ego. The more you learn about yourself, about who you really are, the more you can navigate this journey more wisely, more effectively, without being dragged all over the place by its apparent chaos. Everything is going all over the place. And our reptilian brain, this very ancient part of the brain as they describe it, is causing us to be purely physically focused. And as strange as it is in control of most people. But you don't have to let it control you. You have these wonderful mental faculties. One of them being imagination, of course. Another being the ability to actually think. But ultimately, all of that, if it's being charged by physicality alone, then you're not really still making use of these powers in the way that they were intended to be used, which is purely spiritual. And then as you learn to use them spiritually, you can then make them cause things to change physically to your advantage. So using imagination spiritually, that would mean that instead of letting your imagination run wild with the reptilian brain being all like, oh, what about this? All these doomsday scenarios running through your head, which are nothing but imaginative ideas, imaginative visions in your own consciousness that you are creating by using your imagination in the wrong way. You can then use it spiritually, which means I see physically circumstances that I do not like, that make me uncomfortable, that might be bad for my overall survival on this planet. Okay, let me use my imagination, for example, spiritually to see beyond this physical world as it is right now for me, so that I can grow towards it. So what happens when you use imagination in this manner, for example, is that the circumstances that worry you so much will start to change around because your consciousness shifts frequencies. We have to understand we're dealing with energies, and this will be on a future video where I go into this a bit more deeply myself. But by changing the frequency, which happens automatically if you start to use your imagination, you start to attract and build new ideas through which you can then change your circumstances. So again, it's really important to notice when this occurs in our lives, because hearing this is one thing, but actually being aware of it in your own life, on your own journey, is actually what makes the difference in a huge way. Because then whenever you are worried, you can actually perceive, wait, why am I worried about this? And you're like, well, if I don't make the money, I'm gonna be homeless. And this, again, reptilian brain thinking is going on there. Really think about it. And then you realize, wait, but I am infinite awareness. Why am I letting myself shrink? Why am I not applying my power towards this situation? And then as you start to notice this for yourself, you can actually make a conscious decision. I am going to use this power of who I really am in order to overcome this madness that is otherwise dragging me down into the depths of despair, which is also basically saying into the depths of hell. The true hell is ultimately self-made. The true heaven is also self-made. But it can only occur when we realize who we really are, which is infinite awareness. You see, for me, it already reached a point that I went so deep into my own consciousness. I started to really consider, why am I here? And it's a question many people walk around with, but they can't find the answer. But if you go deep enough beyond the ego, you can actually find it. And I found the answer for myself, for my own personal existence, on this planet, I was outside of my body, and I could feel the true I, the true nature of infinite awareness that I really am. I was moving about, I was doing things, just like you would do physically, for example, but I knew I am this invisible energetic essence, infinite. So, from that I concluded, I know who I am, what I am, and why I came to Earth. And I also know what happens after the physical body dies, what breaks free from the body. By knowing all of this, I can suddenly navigate life from a much different perspective. Like everything that used to bother me or worry me is suddenly not so bothersome anymore, because I know, hey, that worry, the things that bothering me is all part of the ancient brain aspect that wants you to survive in a hopefully as comfortable way as possible. And yeah, of course, you should be comfortable in life. There's no point in living a life where you feel like complete shit every day and complete madness. But you see, much of the problems that we experience are always mental by nature, and if we don't understand where they come from, why they arise within us, then we might fall victim to the idea that, well, I guess this is just how my life is. I guess I just can't do any better, or I guess I'm just supposed to feel like shit. When in reality, you don't have to, if you know who you really are, which is not the body, not the ego, not your status on this planet, whether you're supposedly successful or not, it doesn't matter. It's all self-made. If you know who you really are as infinite awareness, you can override all these strange tendencies that hold down so many people, and they don't even know why. One part of it through this video I wanted to, hint at is that this reptilian brain, this fight or flight, need for reproduction, need for survival, to constantly be anxious and aware and worried that you don't get hurt. It's all making you think that you are the body when you're not the body at all. You're not the ego, you're none of that. So really analyze it for yourself, because it's going to be a fun activity to start to perceive this in your own life as the days go by, and you actually learn to think, wait a minute, I can perceive this happening inside myself, and I know better. I know I don't have to go along with this. Let me actually use my true self, my true infinite awareness, instead of going along with the fears that might otherwise arise due to some ancient aspect of my own brain. It's very interesting how this goes. You see, your infinite awareness ultimately right now functions through the brain. It is not a manifestation of the brain itself. It uses the brain in order to function in time-space reality as we experience it. That is why if you have brain damage, behavior can change greatly, because the consciousness that you really are can't function effectively through that broken brain any longer. So now imagine your brain not being broken. It does have this ancient need for survival, physically speaking, and overtaking your whole spiritual nature. Isn't that silly? Well, it isn't silly if you don't know any better. But I hope through these videos you start to learn more interesting things about yourself, about your true nature, and then you can make better decisions, more meaningful decisions based on who you really are as infinite awareness, and then the journey becomes a lot more fun. I can tell you that much, because for me it has made a huge difference to keep practicing these insights, applying them in my own life, writing about them to myself, and then sharing with you the insights I gain along the way. So hopefully this gives you something to think about and to work with in order to overcome your own limited temporary self and find the true infinite awareness that you really are beyond all that madness.